them. Archiving emails creates a PST file and deletes the emails from the inbox. That's likely why they were in the recovery folder. M&A should look for the PST file. Maybe they haven't looked yet. Either way, glad you found all the emails. The archived PST files shall also be there. Now that I cannot access the files, I cannot really help you locate them. Regarding the links to files, I was trying to gain access to my personal files stored on a 365 platform. I really couldn't quite figure out how to get them no matter what I tried. Normally, someone offboards a person at a senior level, such as myself, and provides time to gather files, contacts, upcoming calendar appointments. When it became obvious no one was setting up a time to do so, I tried to grab the few files I needed for volunteer work. I just gave up after a while. I didn't want to be in the account when my former staff member was also able to access. Like I mentioned before, that seemed odd and certainly not best practice. Of course, this entire process has been a bit unorthodox at best. I am looking forward to continuing our work together to make Albion Blue Oval ready. Let me know if I can be of any further help. And I attached to this a brief chat conversation with Microsoft, a senior leader there, which you can read for yourself, but it clearly indicates that when you archive files and you create the PST, it also puts the deleted emails into the recovery folder as a secondary, what word did they use? And as a secondary, sorry. Well, a secondary insurance in case the PST file was corrupted while it was being created. So then you have a secondary place to go back and look. So I would say to you, that's how the deleted emails ended up in the recovery, because it was in the process of the PST file being created. And thank you for your due diligence.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else in the gallery who would like to have public comment?
Okay.
Okay.
We have people online that have their hand raised.
Very good. Very good.
But we can hear, so.
Okay. Mr. Duncan, can you hear us?
Mr. Dunklin, can you hear us? Mr. Dunklin, unmute your Zoom.
The only person with their name, but
He's still there?
he's muted. He's on the Zoom, but it's muted.
Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Dunklin, if you can hear me, we understand that your Zoom side is muted. So I believe in the lower left corner may be a microphone with a line through it. By pressing that, you may be able to unmute your Zoom line.
He took his hand down, so I'm gonna say. Maybe he doesn't want to speak anymore.
He took his hand down?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. All right.
No one else had their hand.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else in the Zoom community that would like to have a public comment? If so, please admonish by raising your hand such that we can recognize you. Sonia Brown has her hand up. Okay. Sonia, if you can hear us, go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Please go ahead with your public comment.
Thank you. My name is Sonia Brown. I reside at 713 Orchard Drive here in Albion. I have been watching and actually in the past been a participant in Albion politics. And, you know, I just want to encourage you all. As a community, we are so desperate to move forward in a positive direction. And I've watched a lot of things unfold the past few weeks, and it's been disheartening. The playbook is eerily familiar, and it is sad. It is time for Albion to move forward collectively and to put the political games aside. Virgie has demonstrated an excellent track record in inclusiveness and economic development and moving forward collectively. And I just want to see the work continue. So I encourage you all, and thank you for giving up a Saturday morning. But I just want to encourage you all to do what's best for the community, to move us all forward collectively and positively, and especially inclusively. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the cloakroom or waiting room that would like to have public comment from our Zoom audience? Last opportunity in the gallery. Anyone who would like to have comment?
Lynn Reed, 306 West Chestnut, here in Albion. I got calls from last week about the seats that are vacant. People are wondering how can they apply for the position?
Mhm.
And then too, I think that we need to do something to educate the people who are not in the building as to how to get on. I got calls last week from people who wanted to get on, but didn't know how to do it or couldn't get on. So if we could do something to educate people as to how they can have a voice, since if they can't come in, to say what they would like to say, I think that would be very helpful too.
When you say get in, you mean get in onto the Zoom so that they
Yes.
can be heard? Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else from our gallery? Anyone else from the Zoom audience? Say-
I do not have any more hands.
Very good. Great, thank you. With that being said, we will move along. Item number 4 is to approve the minutes from August 10th and the 21st. Additionally, there is a treasurer's.
We can't do it. We can't do it.
No, yeah,
Okay, understood. Just,
I'm saving my moment.
all right, no problem.
Additionally, we have the approval of a treasurer's report, given that we do not have, as my fine colleagues have quickly notified me, we cannot do that because we do not have a quorum. So that being said, please understand that that will be held over to our next meeting, by which we will hopefully have a quorum. So our item 6 today is the discussion of the EDC electronic document retention policy. That is a significant portion of why we are here today. From a managerial or oversight perspective, it becomes very critical, in my opinion, that this is immediately addressed, right? We have, Scott, a number of things that we've talked about in terms of our HR policies, a handbook, a manual, and Vicky, over the last 72 hours or so, we have had something come to our attention that as I have been advised by our council and by some fellow board members, and my own thoughts as well, that needed to be addressed immediately, right? And so that is why I asked for this emergency meeting, right? And I understand that some of our members can't be here for other things, but given the task, as I have been, this seems to be very, very important. And so trying to address it, Scott, from a global perspective, right, is what I wanted to try to do. And of sorts that may get us into some of the weeds of it, but that's primarily why we're here today, right? So council, I'll ask that you sort of advise me along the way, because I may be going into some untried territory. And I certainly don't present myself as an expert in everything. So I want to do right by everyone, but to my fellow board members, to my knowledge, in the short time on the job, we do not have a policy that addresses the electronic portion of emails and the like in our rules and our regulations, right? So the question becomes is how do we address this globally, right? And that starts a conversation, right? So with that being said, council, I'll trot into an area of perhaps thin paper to say, as you all know, we've recently been approached and advised that we've been advised that there's a thought that our internet, our 365 Outlook platform has been incorrectly accessed, right? And I believe that is what we also heard from part of the public comment. I'm sure that's what we've heard. And so that starts a discussion, Scott, that we want to have, okay? Particularly around how we address this kind of thing from a rules standpoint and what we're willing to accept, what we're willing to understand is the way we operate, right? So without hogging the conversation, that's why we're here. Any thoughts on your part?
I would just ask if our council could provide guidance on what we are aware of from the standpoint of any items that have been referred for investigation on the legal side of things, and what he's aware of.
In broad strokes, I guess a recommendation with respect to the development of a electronic document retention policy. I'd recommend that you develop one. You cannot do it today, but I think it's worthwhile to whether the board wants to appoint a subcommittee or delegate this to somebody to give good advice and recommendations about how one creates and how one implements a document, electronic document retention policy. On the primary issue that motivated that my recommendation, the board shared a call for a special meeting. And Ms. Ammerman has addressed part of it with her comments today in the written memo that she distributed to the board today. It was on Tuesday, I think that the board learned, I learned that there had been some effort on Ms. Ammerman's part to, as it was described to us, delete emails. And then or forward emails And there are some, including representatives of the city, that believe that if that was done, and it becomes a question in my mind whether it was done, that might be a criminal act. And at least the city of Albion has requested its police department to work with the Michigan State Police to investigate. I don't know the status of that request. I don't know the status of that investigation. And certainly in light of the memo from and the comments that Ms. Ammerman has made this morning, it calls to question whether it was an attempt to delete or an attempt to save, replicate perhaps to her own email for other purposes, because she wasn't sure what the protocol, what the process was going to be after August 10. I'd recommended to Mr. Harvey that we make sure that everybody else on the board knew that. I know that Mr. Coverly knows because he and Jerome and I have had some conversations. I believe the mayor as a board member here is aware generally of this, but I didn't know what Ms. Clark knew or what Mr. White knows or what Mr. Wallace knows. And at least to the extent that Ms. Clark is here, she probably already knew a lot about it, but now she knows more. And I don't know what, and the other three members who aren't here know, but that was a purpose for my recommendation that there be a meeting. I was mildly hopeful. And I don't know whether Mr. Coverly, who's got more technical knowledge about this than I do, but I don't know whether there's anybody from the IT consulting firm that EDC and the city of Woodruff here. And I see a gentleman here, but I don't know if that's somebody from okay, so I apologize for that.
No, that's
So I don't know whether we know anything more on the technical side, if the board knows anything more on the technical side of what was discovered and learned and evaluated earlier this week. And if it would seem to me worthwhile for the board to discuss that, if there is any more information, that's just my recommendation. I don't have a vote.
If it's all right, if I
please.
add some additional information and context. So I did reach out to the primary IT support person through the Michigan Nonprofit Association that had provided some of the information via email to staff at the EDC, and then was subsequently forwarded to the board. I attempted to see if that individual would be available to appear via phone today and provide some additional context. Unfortunately, on the short notice, that individual was not able to do that. I think he is willing and or able, as indicated in his email, to potentially appear at a subsequent meeting with more notice and or respond to a set of written questions that the board would like to direct to that individual to provide some additional context. From what was stated and provided when I did speak with that individual briefly, there was an indication that there was 2 attempts to, and again, these are not my words, I'm not an IT expert in any form or fashion, but as presented the information and shared verbally, there was 2 attempts to delete emails. And again, we've got some additional context from public comment and a memo here in front of us that may provide some additional explanation. And then subsequent spreadsheet of various emails from the president CEO's account over the course of 9 days. So it's a very large number. It's not anything, you know, we're not trying to isolate anything at this point, nor do I have that ability to do that. I was just provided the information that this account was initially set up and many years ago, with many being undefined. It was not an account that was set up, by, the most recent president and CEO. This was, and at that time, the default was to not have something called an auditing tracking put on. It's not now, apparently, if you were to do that as a general practice to install it, it defaults to that. And at that time, and subsequent to that initial establishment of the Microsoft 365 software, it was never enabled. So they have very limited ability to support with tracking, IP addresses, where it was, and again, these are more information that I don't have technical wherewithal to get into more detail on that. But that's the gist of what was provided. Given there's been some referral of some kind to Albion Public Safety Department, they may be able to with additional forensic, review and an investigation, may be able to shed more additional light on that. I think that's the extent of the information that I have at this time.
Ms. Clark?
So I have questions on a couple of different things. As a former employee at different locations and also observing protocol in different locations when people were either terminated or voluntarily quit or resigned for other reasons, there has been steps that were protocol steps that were in place because of the IT information that was available for the person that was employed. So my question is, do we have a policy in place for someone when they're being excused from duties of what is done and how is it supposed to be done? In other words, you're released, how you get your personal items, how you get your personal information and things of that nature. And the reason why I'm posing these questions is because when I resigned from my job, even though I was resigning because I was at that time deciding to do other things, the IT expert came to me, set up a date, and we did the protocol of what needed to be done because I had personal information also in their system, such as my resumes and other stuff like that, that I needed to download and get out of their system for my own personal use. And then I observed when people were released that the IT person, again, would come with the person that was being released, and also the HR person or the person in charge of HR activities were available for the same purpose. Never, and even when we went on vacation or were on medical leaves or things like that, we were automatically locked out of the system. But that was protocol, it was in writing, and it was in place. So I'm wondering, do we have anything of that nature?
I have no idea. I've been involved as counsel for the EDC for about 6 months, maybe 7. My partner, Jim Reed, who had been involved, I haven't had an opportunity to, he's retiring. And I haven't had an opportunity to ask him, does he have any idea about this? I'm going to guess that he doesn't. And a person who may have information about what that was is perhaps sitting in the room in her former capacity. She may have known, but I don't know. It would be a good thing to have developed. I believe Mr. Newman, as the then board chair, if he didn't talk with Ms. Ammerman after the August 10 meeting, planned to. I'm not sure exactly what that conversation may have been. And then, of course, there was the action of August 15 that made things even more interesting. And the word interesting covers lots of ground.
And with saying that, that's just us, again, noticing the errors in our own board, in our own processes, that the administrative part is very much needed to have someone to work in our capacity as HR to put these type of things in place. You can't hold a person accountable for something that you don't have in place and don't have a standard. That's just not admirable for anyone. So that's why I wanted to put that out there and ask that question.
So council, out of courtesy and respect, and perhaps a closed session at some point may be needed, but I think that the marching orders have been to keep this organization going and moving forward. And just a couple comments. I don't know how formal our process was with Ms. Ammerman exiting, right? I recall one of my comments publicly was, is there an offboarding process, Scott, that we have, or are we in place? Or when is her job over? Is it over now, this moment? Is it this afternoon at the end of the day? So we didn't have that. So my job's not to go backwards and try to kick people, but my observations are clean and simple, and I think all of you are part of that. So I know you were tasked with developing some departing kinds of documents, right?
Sure.
And I don't think this was any part of that, was it?
If by this you mean the kinds of things that Ms. Clark has referred to, no.
No, I think you were focused, or your task as charged was more of a departing severance kind of package, kind of situation.
Right, it's something I call a separation agreement, and that's what, and for clarity, a moment ago, you referred to Scott, and I think you were talking about comments you made at the board meeting, and I'm guessing you were referring to Scott Evans.
No,
Not Scott.
Scott.
We had, at the time of the meeting on August 10, we had two Scotts,
That's true.
and I'm not sure, just for everybody's benefit, and particularly Scott covered this, I don't know which Scott you meant when you were referring to a Scott, but regardless of that.
Yeah, and I should have made it clear, but yeah.
So as I said earlier, after the meeting, I was asked to prepare a severance agreement. I called it a separation agreement. I did that, I believe, shared it with, as I recall, shared it, of course, with the then chair. I think perhaps with Mr. Evans as well. I'm not 100% certain what happened with it, whether it was, I believe it was shared with Virgie. I did not share it with Ms. Everman, but I believe Mr. Goodman did. And then Tuesday arrived.
Okay. Then Tuesday arrived, okay. So thinking globally for a minute, how do we remedy this kind of concern on the go forward again, right? How do we develop a policy? So part of my suggestion, Ms. Clark, Mr. Coverly, is that we add this task to the HR person that we've hired. I think they call Main Street, Bonnie Saxton.
Consultant with the Rose Street Advisors.
Yes, exactly. That we add this task to their duties to develop rules around this kind of thing. Right, and what global policy we install for the Economic Development Council. I think that is a big step in us becoming a more polished group and a polished organization, right? from a perspective of what we do and where we go from here, right? Today, tomorrow, next week. In the block I lived in, you know, you were innocent until you were found guilty of something. I think that this document that Ms. Ammerman has provided today speaks directly to this. And I'm just not seeing malice intent here. I'm not feeling malice intent here. I think that there's been a big, huge run that didn't include the accused, if you will, as to what has gone on, right? So our job is to be transparent with this community. Our job is not certainly to stand for wrong. Right? If someone is doing something wrong, then we have an obligation, as we've said, I said from the very beginning of being honorably nominated by you all and made your chair, to be transparent and clear with what we're doing in this community. Equally said, I have no desire whatsoever to damn someone for presumptions, right? I look at what has been really done here, right? If I'm reading this document and understanding what it says, and I'm not a technical expert by any stretch of the imagination, what I'm hearing said that these are archived files, right? And if they are archived files, then what really happened? So I throw that out there for you all just in a discussion purposes. I will also say to you all as a board, if we want to chat about this today privately, we do not have a quorum. So if I understand the rules, I am not able to ask for a vote to make our conversation private or go to a closed session. But respectfully, I would ask that if that was needed, then we respectfully ask our audience to excuse us for a few minutes. But I don't think that's personally done, but I think that it's important that I say it, right? So again, I ask for input from my fellow board members.
So, I basically am not going on feelings. I'm going by, in this whole situation of what we've heard and understood. I'm basing it upon how things should be done. I'm making this black and white. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm doing. So if we didn't have anything in place, then there's not a reason to be questioning it. Anybody that has left employment does those sort of things. You just do, because you have things, personal items, things on your desk. All of that usually happens in place. From what I'm gathering, none of this was structurally done well. And I would hope that somebody would look at that and realize, before making accusations and putting things in the public, that you should consider all things before you step forward. At some point or another, you're starting to create a mood or atmosphere of trying to defeat someone, especially when you don't do things in the right protocol. And that's what upsets me about this whole process. Is because for some reason or another, we have thought that we could do things our own way during some of these processes. And to be fair to anybody, whether it be Virgie, me, anybody, you have to do things in a proper way, in a proper manner. So I don't know what they're gonna do going forward. I really don't see much coming out of this. Just by other structures that I've worked in. That's basically how I'm looking at this. I've never, ever went through anything like this with the structure of how this has been done. So we definitely, I say again, this HR person, we need to have these things put in place, have things done. People need to recognize mistakes were made and own up to them. And I close with that.
So I think we've got two situations. One, if indeed we did not have appropriate HR policy, we did not establish with the former chair and executive committee, did not put together a uniformed and outlined offboarding process for the actions that they proposed that be taken and were ultimately taken. That is in the past. We don't. We can only address what's we have moving forward in that regard. So certainly moving forward to develop a policy subcommittee that works in tandem with the HR consultant to develop an appropriate, and compliant with all state and federal laws, develop an employee handbook and process guide for establishment of policies. We need to do that moving forward. Secondly, from what I've heard from our council is that we've been made aware that there appears to be an ongoing legal investigation. We do not know where we are in that manner. I am uncomfortable proceeding without a resolution of that. I think it's owed to the board to have that level of information, to anyone accused by that to have a full outcome and vetting of that. So we are fully informed. I think that's partly what has led to us being in this situation, that there's been some actions that have been taken without all members of the board and being informed and apprised of everything. So that would be my recommendation to move forward, that we always defer to our legal counsel and what legal counsel suggests and provide. I have no desire to, waste money that the board spends to hire someone and advise us and not kind of be guided by that information and subsequently to hear from that and put myself in jeopardy. So given that, I would defer to what is being shared with us from council. So.
Council?
If I may offer a recommendation, mostly driven by the fact that you don't have a quorum, you can't take any action today, whether you want it or not. The emails were in effect public property, unlike what might be the case if this was a private nonprofit corporation, which it is not, and how emails might have been handled in that setting are going to be different than how emails might have been handled in this case. As I said earlier, I believe representatives of the city have asked for an investigation. I don't know the status of that. I recommend that the board seek more information about that, whether you ask me to do it or somebody else contacts the mayor, the city manager, the city attorney to find out what's happening with that. And it may be that it's a quick investigation and easily resolved. It may be that it drags on for a while, but I recommend that you not plan, unfortunately, to continue negotiations as the item is described, item 7 on today's agenda, until that's resolved. And hopefully it's soon. But maybe you need to call for a special meeting in the very near future, not Monday or Tuesday, but soon, and hopefully have a quorum and hopefully have more information to consider what may be coming out of that investigation. And more information, it would seem to me worthwhile for the IT consultant to be made aware of what Zimmerman has put in her memo and said today. Maybe it changes things, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. And I wish there was just one way you could resolve this. There's probably not just one way, but whatever the resolution is, you can't do it today because you don't have a quorum.
Mhm,
Correct.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Thank you.
So are you all set? You finished?
Thank you.
Yes. Mhm. So, we're behind the 8 ball. We're behind where we should be going, where we're doing what we're doing. I'm not sure. I'm pretty certain that there's nothing that's going to change in terms of what has happened, right? I would waver greatly on the side of us going about the business that we've set forward and defining what that interim compensation package is going to look like and it get done. I would hate like the Dickens to be 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, any untold time to find that there's no air here, right? And then 2, 3, 4, whatever undefined period of time, I start working on a compensation program. And in the meantime, I let ambiguity seep in, right? Innuendo, rumor, false truths fester, right? I'm not interested in that. We signed interlocal agreements. Vendors are calling, sub-tiers, people interested. This does nothing to help us. Nothing to help us. The only thing it does to help us is to add innuendo, rumors, lets falsehoods catapult themselves into reality. We're better than that. At least on my watch, we're going to be better than it, right? So I'm going to say that our last vote stands, and that is to develop an agreement and to move forward. If someone else in the city wants to investigate or what have you, they should have the courtesy and the professionalism to keep us well attuned to what they're doing, right? And as I've chatted with counsel, if I understand counsel, you don't have a definitive of what they're doing now.
Correct.
So, this is serious, right? We're playing with someone's career in their life. And to let it just waver around on the waves of uncertainty is right.
on its own.
But it's been live on YouTube as well. So we're still live on YouTube.
Okay,
And you're back on the Zoom, and there's people still.
okay, all right, and we're recording now? We're still recording? Okay, all right, okay. Well, I was on a roll. So from my perspective, and trying to think of this in a global fashion, guys, I say our last vote stands that we took. We continue doing what we do. Our eyes are wide open to it. At least today, we've had some discussions around formulating a global policy, formulating the fact that we need to include this in our HR's scope of work so that we have a policy that going forward we can work with. But I don't suggest at all. I don't say we stop. And from my limited knowledge and how this works, I want us to abide by the last vote that we took, and we move forward with developing a package, presenting it. We committed last week that it would be this past Thursday. It's Saturday. I'm not keeping my word in that fashion either, right? Do we investigate that? I don't know, right? And I'm not trying to be facetious, but I say that we move forward and develop a package to move this thing forward. If the city is investigating, please ask them to advise us with our council, and we can talk about that and move forward, right? That's what I would think from where I'm sitting. Any other comments or compliments to be made? Yes, sir.
I would agree with you that because we do not have quorum, we certainly cannot take action. So the motion approved at the last meeting stands in that regard. I would just maybe to your point of not stopping and holding things up, we create a compensation package for a interim president, CEO. So we are ready to move one way or the other based upon the outcome of said investigation. So it's not specific. We're not right. We're moving forward, and the process does not stop, but it allows us to pivot quickly without having to read outside of taking the official action one way or the other. Once we have quorum, that we just preside and we're ready, that it's prepared in such a way that it could be depending upon any decision and outcome that we are advised of, and we choose to take action. Once we have that information, it's just ready to go. It's more of a general compensation package. And so it's just ready to go. So if to what I would hope would occur, that no legal action is required to be taken, we're able to proceed and move on the course that we engaged in. But if there is information that is put forward and we're advised of full legal intent to move forward, then we're able to pivot.
I agree. So the question is, when will we start to work on this packet? That's just the whole statement.
So well said to both of my esteemed colleagues. If I recall, the vote was specific to Ms. Ammerman, right? So that is the momentum with which we have to specifically move. It was not a turnkey pivot on a dime. It was designed and spoken to with Ms. Ammerman being a focal point, right? So Scott, I get it. I hear what you're saying. And I certainly appreciate the line of caution, right? But our marching orders was to develop and design a package quickly by which to put Ms. Ammerman back to work, right? I think we'd stay focused on that. And we urge those who are conducting the investigation or doing whatever they want to do there, that they move as expeditiously as we do, for they have equal to lose in opportunities, right, for this city, right? We still don't have someone sitting in the EDC doing the day-to-day work, right?
So the question is, when are we gonna get that done? That's where we're at.
So
If I may. As I said earlier, I prepared and sent to Jerome before Wednesday of last week, I think it was on Tuesday, a proposed employment agreement. I'm mostly certain that did not get to Ms. Ammerman yet, because Mr. Harvey and I have not talked about what I put into it, which was what I understood was going to be a template for what the negotiating team, as I think that, yes, as the label was created in the minutes, wanted to do. And what I said before still exists, and Mr. Harvey and whoever else he thinks should be a part of the team could look at that, suggest that I make some changes, and decide how we want to submit that to Ms. Ammerman to consider. And in the meantime, other things may be going on at the same time. So the attorney has done everything he can do.
I wasn't putting that on.
everybody knows I have a little bit of humor, so I'll just roll that truck off my back. Yeah, and I will say to you, Vicky, great question. And I will report that all parties have been reacting as we asked them to, right? And so, as counsel is absolutely correct, Scott equally as hard has been working on this. The Bonnie Saxton from the HR consulting company has been working hard. So I now have, I think, a pot. Scott, would you agree? I think we have a pot now that middle of this week at worst, we'll have something formulated maybe as early as Tuesday, Vicky, right? And now that I'm starting to feel myself again after council's truck, this is the very thing I want to avoid. Because the minute this came to our attention, we scrambled figuring out what to do. Slowing the process again, right? You follow what I'm saying? This took our center stage of attention, right? And so I'll tell you, council's drafts are on my desk, but I've got 4 pages of notes on what has transpired in order to be in this meeting this morning. So we just can't afford to let anything get in our way. So again, by Tuesday or Wednesday, with council's blessing, I know you have a tight schedule this week. We'll have that pot of packet ready to go. Right.
Okay.
Okay. So if there's no other comments or any other discussion by our fellow board members and council, we'll proceed with all haste to get a package together. Whatever is being done outside our organization, that's fine. We'll get a feedback. Council, if you will, reach out to the appropriate folks and let's find out where it's at. And in the meantime, we will move forward, and we're just past our time. So that answers the update on the interim CEO and president negotiations as well. A motion to excuse absent members is a foregone conclusion, but we will do
Nobody
it.
can make it
We can make it, yeah.
because we don't have a quorum.
Yep.
So lastly, we will have public comment for nearing the end of the day's meeting.
And if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
one of the members of the audience, and I don't remember the name and I apologize for that, wondered about saying that she had heard in the community that there are people that are interested in applying to be on this board and wondered how to do that. And I believe an answer is contact the mayor, Ms. Snyder, because she's the one who appoints people to the board with the advice and consent, of the city council. So contacting the mayor may be a possibility, contacting the city clerk may be a possibility. I don't know if the city has a form for that application.
Yes, they do.
Okay, and so there is a process. If there's people interested, I assume the mayor would like to hear from them because there's at least 4 empty spots on this board, and it isn't as able to be as inclusive of the community as presumably everybody would like to be.
Mhm.
Sorry for interrupting the public comment.
No, that's quite all right. I mean, well placed.
Is there certainly a time between the time they apply and well?
So this board doesn't make the decision about who's going to be appointed. That's a city council, actually a mayor and city council decision.
Yes.
So for at least clarity is the most recent member appointed to the board. It was a process of filling out an online application on the city website. And then submitting and waiting for a background check and for council to take action and put it on the agenda. So I would say it was probably 2 to 3 months before I came before the board and sat here and was appointed by the actual city commission, plus or minus some time in there, I don't know, but so.
And you can also pick it up if people don't have
Sure, I'm sure.
internet or computers. They can come down to the city manager's office and get that information.
So,
You can come on, you come, but
Yep.
it's open to the public.
Yeah, my name is Nathaniel Bogan, 1006 Fairlane Drive, Albion. Yeah, I called over a week ago because I've already filled out the application for the EDC. And I spoke with Jill, the clerk, and basically what she told me is that it was on the mayor's desk. And it was up to her, because that's one of her powers as the mayor, to select the members for the EDC. She didn't mention anything about going back to the council. She stated that it was her decision to make, and she had the authorization. So for clarification, I want to know if that's correct or not. That's all.
I believe it's not. The combination of this organization's bylaws, the articles of incorporation for the EDC, which were created a couple of decades ago anyway, and the EDC Act say that the mayor gets to appoint subject to the advice and consent of the council. So it's
City council.
it's a city council.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
okay, any other comments from the public? Public comments time is now.
Well, I have one on the,
Very good.
I'll bring there.
All right. For those of you who are in the gallery, you may prepare to go next after we have a Zoom comment. We'll keep it moving. 11:15 is what I promised this meeting to last, and I am there now. Anyone from the Zoom ready to go?
But she took her name back.
Okay, while we wait on clarification there, anyone else from the gallery choose to have a public comment? Anyone else from the public gallery?
Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead with your public comment. You have 3 minutes. We welcome your comments. Please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that this has been a really interesting meeting today. And Mr. Harvey, I think you've done a great job of moderating it. And the council members that are there have asked or made some really great statements. So I think the council is doing a great job just from my observation. The other thing is, I heard mention about the form to be a member of the council. And it was online at one time, and I tried to look at it to see just what questions were asked or what you needed to do. And then it was taken down. So I'm wondering, what's happening with that. And I'm glad that Mr. Bogan asked the question as to how you can become a member of the, council. And so that gave some clarification there. I do have a question though about the council where and the city having possibly an investigation. Is there any conflict with someone who is on the city council and also a member of the AEDC council being involved in possibly this investigation? That's just a question that I have. And the other thing is, I hope you guys do move forward expeditiously, because without having someone in that position as a, for the interim president, that's making the city be stagnant. You can't move forward if you don't have someone in that position to make decisions and that has the contacts that need to be made. So I just hope that, like Mr. Harvey was saying, he'll have the information by Tuesday, no longer than Wednesday. I hope that you can have a quorum available, because Albion needs to move forward. We need to grow. And without being able to make decisions, this is holding us just in a limbo. So I'm hoping that you can move forward as quickly as possible. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that I didn't say at the beginning, my name is Tracy K. Tolbert. I live at 558 Riley Street, Lansing, Michigan. And I have a building at 618 Austin Street. And I have presented before that I was in precinct 2. For clarification and correction, I am in precinct 1. So I do want to make that clear. But I think you guys are doing a great job in trying to resolve things, and I hope that it's done. I hope it's done more quickly than, than waiting for a whole investigation. As the council said for you guys, there's no timeline. So I hope there's a timeline where you can get it done within the next month. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the Zoom gallery with a comment?
It looks like Sonia Brown has her hand up and it's on the unmute.
Okay. All right, Ms. Brown,
Yes.
please go right ahead.
Thank you. Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. As I was listening to Ms. Talbert speak, I just, some immediate questions came to me. Just wondering which city officials initiated a criminal investigation. Like, what is the protocol for that? If I call and say, I suspect something has happened by this sitting board member, is that enough to just prompt someone from the city side to call the police and say, hey, launch a criminal investigation? I am concerned that our criminal justice system is being used and weaponized against political opponents in this community. And this is nothing new. I would just, keep doing the work you're doing. It's stuff, it is what it is. But I would say I am curious to know which city official initiated this criminal investigation. And And why? Like, what protocol was the EDC chair or board members even considered or consulted before the police was alerted? It just seems to me to be a bunch of smoke and mirrors. So thank you. Happy Saturday, and keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else from the Zoom gallery? Anyone from our audience? Okay.
Virgie Ammerman, again, 305 East Main Street. I'll make this quick. Just a couple of points of information that I think might be helpful. I did request a copy of a police report from the City of Albion Police Department, and I have not received any feedback on that yet. I too would be interested in reading that. The HR consultant that has been contracted, just a 3-point endeavor there. So we signed a contract with them while I was still employed for an HR handbook. So I think that is in process, and last week we had the kickoff meeting, which of course we didn't have. So I think if you work with Bonnie, she would probably be willing to kick that off. That contract's already been signed, so I think you could start that now, even without, a leader in the seat. But because that would have been a board input anyway, so I think you can do that. We also had contracted with her for 5 hours per month of HR advice and counsel. We're exceeding that at this point, I'm sure. I don't know, but I would imagine there's a third potential, and that was to contract with them outside of that 5-hour contract for an appropriate CEO evaluation process, hiring, and those sorts of things, because the CEO role typically is contracted rather than at will, like the rest of the staff. So my urge to you might be to keep in mind that's a different engagement, and that was meant to be a separate engagement that you would want to agree to hire her for at your next board meeting potentially. I want to remind you that we have Labor Day coming up, so people will begin to, rightly so, take off. And so I would hope that we would solve the interim agreement before the end of the week, much before the end of the week. And because you mentioned the separation agreement, the 21 days on that separation agreement will also expire, I believe, right around Labor Day or after. So we have to kind of button all that up, I think would be appropriate. EDC members, new board members are certainly would be excited to get more applications. I have received numerous calls from people trying to apply, and there does seem to be a glitch with the online application process. So I have received a lot of calls. In fact, 2 men that just had to take another call that were here in the galley with us did try to apply last week. And I don't know if they were ever successful, but we have multiple links out in social media, and some of them just we cannot seem to get it to the right place. And then the last thing I would mention, I also am receiving lots of calls from vendors who are not getting paid. And I don't like to see, for whomever is taking this interim role and hopefully permanent role, we don't want to lose any momentum with vendors, because we need people that provide services and work for the EDC. So we seem to have stalled on getting vendor payments out. So and because it's my number they're calling, I seem to be the person hearing it, but I just wanted to report that here. And of course, as always, I love Albion and I love the work I'm doing, and I can't wait to get back to it. So thank you for being here today.
Ms. Reed, Councilman Reed, please go right ahead. Thank you.
Lynn Reed, 306 West Chestnut, Albion, Michigan. And I would also like to see Virgie or somebody get back in that seat, Virgie especially, because we have the grants and things out. We're working on a T-ball field for Albion and redoing McAuliffe Park. And we can't get any information because there's nobody there to get it from. And this is the time of year when companies are reducing their prices because they're getting ready to go into the next year. So where I can get play stuff and different stuff for a park a lot cheaper than I can in the springtime. So I very much appreciate it. Soon I called her and told her, get back to work, because I want to get that park finished, and I most certainly have to at least get the notice that I have funding for the things that we're trying to do there, and we can't get it until we get somebody back in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nora Jackson, 1200 Edward Street, a member of the city council.
City Councilman,
Yes.
thank you.
No, yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Precinct 3. I also will encourage you guys, I thank you for just being able to be here and having a discussion that you had openly with everyone, so we could be more transparent, so other individuals can go on, can understand what's going on. I know sometimes they blast us on City Watch News, they put us in the newspaper, but yet as many people that have not taken that time to come out here and find out what is really going on and what is taking place. So that transparency, I do appreciate every last one of you doing that and taking your time to be here on a day we all could be sleeping in. But to ditto on what Virgie was speaking of, I did stop by the EDC office yesterday. I wanted to see how things were going on. And I was told by the individual that was there working that she had a file sitting there that needs to be signed so that vendors could be paid. So that is true. The vendors do need to be paid. I know we want the lights to stay on there. We want the rent to be paid. And we do want to have a place for the EDC and people to come in to continue to do work that has been started. And yes, we do have people from Ford that is yet waiting on us to get our act together so they can proceed and we can go further in building up this town and not continue to tear the town down. So I'm quite sure I'll be on City Watch News again, but it's okay because we're all here today to help Albion go forward in the right way. And yes, Ms. Clark, I did like some of the things that you were speaking about how people are fired and let go, because it all should be done decent and in order. And I do thank you, the attorney, I won't say city attorney, but attorney for the EDC, is that we do have to have these procedures and processes put in place. Thank you for working on the contract, hoping that you guys can go further in what you have already begun and started. Scott, I appreciate you as well as being careful. Also, I appreciate you, Harvey is standing up for helping things go forward. But I would love to see those processes and procedures go in force. Also, even if it's a resolution for all the different legal things that will continue to come up. So it does keep you guys safe. I guess the rest of us will continue to have to defend with our lawyer also. But thank you once again for everyone who did come.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Anyone else from the Zoom gallery? All right.
So as far as for the questions that's been asked, I'm sure we don't have answers to all of those, but we'll get back to Sonia and Ms. Reed about some of those, and Mr. Bogan about some of the questions. I'll personally see if I can get some answers and I'll get back with you guys.
Yeah, we'll reach out to the mayor, right? I think we have that place to reach out to the mayor, share those public comments that have been made around nominating and the like, and certainly make certain that all of those who are have had something addressed, that we will make certain that we get it to the right people and follow up if we can possibly follow up, right? Yeah, absolutely. To all of you, I say thank you so very much, unless there's something I've missed or that is further needed to be done. I appreciate you taking the time this morning. It is now 11:30. I will consider this meeting now closed.